Oregon saw an alarming increase in bias incidents and bias crimes last year. That's according to new data released by the state's Department of Justice tonight. KATU's Christina Giardinelli spoke to the department about the spike and also to a victim. She's live in Salem now. And Christina, there's also been an increase in bias crimes reported to law enforcement, right?
Yeah, that's right. From 2021 to 2022, law enforcement agencies across Oregon saw a spike of about 14% in bias crime reports. And the DOJ says that's just the tip of the iceberg. Now, I talked to a bias crime victim who was assaulted just a year ago in this South Salem neighborhood.
Just over a year ago, C, who asked to be identified only with his first initial for safety reasons, was the victim of a violent bias assault in the South Salem neighborhood. He tells me it came after nearly a year of harassment from his neighbors.
I was called homophobic slurs. I was called racial slurs. I was threatened with violence.
Court documents show 24-year-old Jerome Ricks and his 31-year-old brother, Brandon Toquero, pled guilty to third-degree assault and first-degree bias crime. Ricks, who had previous felony convictions, was sentenced to just over a year in prison. Toquero received 36 months probation. The victim suffered multiple injuries, including a broken collarbone. He says the effects of the attack linger.
It's affected every single element of my life on every level. I am not the same person I was before the assault.
In recent months, we've reported on similar violent bias incidents, including one that left a Portland food cart owner injured. Joanna Costa, the Oregon DOJ's bias response coordinator, says these incidents represent an alarming pattern.
There's an increase in targeting that's happening, and we're seeing that through a lot of our communities around the state, sharing things that were not happening several years ago, were not happening last year.
A recent report from the department shows that from 2020 to 2022, bias incident hotlines saw an increase in reports of 178%. Law enforcement agencies also saw a 14% increase of bias crime reports from 2021 to 2022. If you or someone you know has been the victim of a bias incident, you can receive advice and support through this anonymous hotline number, 844-924-2427. Coming up at 6 p.m., I'll show you who has been the most common victim of these types of incidents. For now, live in South Salem, Christina Giardinelli, KATU News.
All right, Christina, thank you for that.
It's affected every single element of my life on every level. I am not the same person I was before the assault.
Bias crimes and incidents are happening more frequently in Oregon. That's according to a report released by the State Department of Justice tonight. KATU's Christina Giardinelli talked to the department about the alarming spike and is live in Salem with the story. You also talked to a bias crime victim, right, Christina?
Yeah, that's right. I talked to the victim of a violent assault that happened just over a year ago here in this South Salem neighborhood. And I looked through the court records and found that 2 men were convicted of bias crimes in the assault. Now, the DOJ says this is an alarming pattern throughout Oregon. It's been 1 year since a violent assault in this South Salem neighborhood. The victim, who wants to remain anonymous for safety reasons, says the scars are more than physical.
Life is never going to be the same physically or mentally. I'm going to be in physical pain every day for the rest of my life. I'm going to have PTSD.
Court records show 24-year-old Jerome Ricks and his 31-year-old brother, Brandon Toquero, were convicted of bias crime and third-degree assault in the incident. In recent months, we've reported on a number of similar incidents, including the violent assault of a black food cart owner in Portland. Joanna Costa, the Oregon DOJ's bias response coordinator, says incidents like these are on the rise in Oregon.
We once again saw reporting of anti-Black and African-American bias still leading all reports.
A report from the department shows a spike of 178% in overall bias incidents and a spike of 14% in bias crimes reported to law enforcement. Costa says data reported is just the tip of the iceberg.
In 2020, the Criminal Justice Commission did a social science survey of communities and found that in 2019, there were 1.265 million bias crimes and bias incidents in Oregon.
The DOJ report also saw a spike in anti-Semitic incidents and incidents targeting LGBTQ persons. If you or someone you know has been the victim of a bias incident, you can receive advice and support through this anonymous hotline number, 844-924-2427. Live in Salem, Cristina Giardinelli, KATU News.
All right, Christina, thank you for that. Also